Okay, so as we all know, a large problem that we've been dealing with during this recession in the United States is obviously the high levels of inflation that we've had. You know what I'm saying? Like I said before, every time you go to your grocery store, the gas station, you can already tell, man, my $20, my $10 ain't stretching as far. But it seems that Switzerland has been able to beat high inflation. As you know, a lot of countries are dealing with high inflation as a result of the post, C-19 era that we're in and everything like this. But the small European nation, like it says here, of Switzerland beat high inflation. And it says here's how. So this will be really interesting for us to look into, like, how they did it. Is this possibly a model that the United States could use? Are there possibly some tips, some things that we could learn, from how Switzerland is operating? Obviously, they're very different. Switzerland is very small. The U.S. is very big, so there are a lot of differences. So obviously, some of the methods that they use just won't work, with the large scale that we are at in the United States. But hopefully there's something that we can get out of this. I thought it would be very interesting to take a look at. I thought we could learn something. So, I wanted to show you guys it. Let's see here. I'll make myself a little bit bigger so y'all can see how amazing I look. Here we go. So it says the small European nation of Switzerland beat sky-high inflation. Here is how. And here's a video right here. Let's see. I'm actually going to make a quick little switcheroo. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see. I'm going to do this. All right. And of course, there's an ad with Michael B. Jordan.
Me too.
Experience more.
Shout out to Michael B. Jordan, man. Great guy. Have you guys, let me know too in the comments, have you guys seen Creed 3? I haven't seen it yet. I've seen 1 and 2.
Rising costs and higher interest rates. It's hard to talk about the economy these days without thinking of one word: inflation. But as many countries across the globe battle sky-high inflation, here in Switzerland, a small mountainous nation in Western Europe, the rise in prices has been...
Do y'all like that accent? Do y'all like that accent? I like the accent. Did they get like a Swedish person from CNBC to speak on Sweden? Not Sweden, Switzerland. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Interesting.
Been far less dramatic. Have you felt the effects of price rises and inflation over the past year?
Not that much, to be honest.
It's been all right.
Most of the things is okay.
Wow, that is very different from the United States, I can tell you that.
I think so.
Inflation in Switzerland hit a 29-year high of 3.5% in 2022. While still high by Swiss standards, it is well below the double-digit inflation rates in other advanced economies like the US, UK, and Eurozone.
Wow.
So, what is it about the Swiss economy that means it's largely avoided rampant inflation? And what can other countries learn from it? There are multiple parts to Switzerland's inflationary story. For starters, prices in the country are already beginning from a high base. Switzerland is one of the world's wealthiest countries, with a GDP per capita outstripping that of other major economies like the US, Japan, and Germany. It is also home to some of the richest citizens in the world, with an average wealth of nearly 700.
Yeah, we already know. If you've watched any movies, you guys already know what's up with the Swiss bank accounts. Not only is the whole country pretty much doing very well. I wouldn't say wealthy, but doing very well. This is also where people all around the world looking to protect their money, take their money. The Swiss banks are pretty much the most protected banks that there are. Not even pretty much, they are the most protected banks that they are. I actually did a video a few months ago where pharmaceutical families were using Swiss banks to hide their money and everything like that while they were being sued in the United States. And we learned that a large reason why a lot of people like to put their money in Swiss banks is the Swiss government has laws and will actually defend against another country. So let's say you do something illegal with your money in the United States and you put it in a Swiss bank account. The US will come in, go to the US banks and they'll say, hey, they're arrested for these charges, give us the money. And they'll just give the money. The Swiss be like, well, there's a barrier here. Here's your money. There's the barrier. Here's the government, and the government has to work very, very hard to gain access to Swiss bank accounts. Very, very hard. The Swiss bank account, excuse me. The Swiss bank accounts are one of the only bank accounts that will actually kind of fight in defense of your favor, and that's why they're so well paid.
$100,000 per adult, and a steep cost of living to match.
Those are nice.
In
those are nice
2022,
houses.
the Swiss cities of Zurich and Geneva held steady among the world's 10 most expensive cities, even as inflation pushed up living costs in other pricey
Like a land of
places
rich
like
people.
Singapore, New York, and Tel Aviv. Tobias Stroman is a professor of modern and economic history at the University of Zurich.
That's who we need to
It's
hear from.
because people are, on average, quite rich. The share of food in the overall budget of household is not as big as maybe in other countries. We also have inequality, of course, but from an international perspective, we have, I think, a very well-functioning social policy.
As a result, Swiss citizens are generally less impacted by price hikes because they tend to spend a lower proportion of their income on essentials versus discretionary items such as vacations and hobbies, which they can scale back when prices go up. Another reason for Switzerland's relative...
That's a very, very important point that they make, and one of those distinctions that I was talking about between the U.S. and Switzerland. In the United States, we're made up a majority of, lower and middle class people, where in Switzerland, it seems like a majority of people are almost upper class when compared to the rest of the world and everything like that. In the US, a lot of people are going to be spending their money less on, things like vacations, jewelry, things that you really don't need. And they're going to end up buying things like toilet paper, medicines that you may need, food, chicken, eggs, consumer staples and everything like that. Whereas Switzerland, people are more focused on consumer like discretionary spending, essentially money that you don't need to spend, but you'll spend anyway, and they focus less on, staples, things that you need. So that's really a big dynamic, and that's kind of seems to be why they're able to really shield themselves from inflation. That's just a point to make. That's not something the U.S. will be able to capitalize on, though, because we're not built like that. Our nation just economically and social economically just is not built for that type of model.
Price stability stems from the strong Swiss franc. The country's currency has also steadily strengthened, rising in value against the euro to reach parity in 2022. And while the US dollar strengthened against many major currencies in 2022, the Swiss franc held steady amid volatility in Europe. That's largely due to its status as a safe haven currency or defensive asset. The Swiss franc is heavily backed by large reserves of gold, bonds, and financial assets, which help the Swiss National Bank ensure the country's stability during times of volatility.
It's been a safe haven currency in times of crisis, and it actually started about 100 years ago after World War I. And of course, with the war and all that and COVID, the Swiss franc again was in much demand.
The strength of its currency is also beneficial for its economy, which is heavily dependent on international trade. In 2020, Switzerland imported around $300 billion worth of goods and services, the majority of which come from neighbouring EU countries. A stronger Swiss franc, therefore, provides an effective discount on those imports. In the same year, Switzerland exported a near equal amount.
As you guys know, essentially what they're saying here is just like with the United States dollar and how it's able to stretch. Apparently so is a Swiss franc, because it not only normally grows in value, but it actually seems to be able to hold its value very well. And like I said, with the United States, it's a little bit different because like they says, they're bringing a lot of imported goods in where the U.S. can actually produce a lot of that stuff ourselves and everything like that. It basically means that countries, when they bring their stuff in, the Swiss franc is pretty much just much stronger in general. And since it's already strengthened by that and they're already dealing with so much international stuff, if other countries are being hurt and everything like that, Swiss can still buy things from them, but they can just buy it from a cheaper price. So if there's war going on all outside of, Switzerland and everything like that, and people are, having to sell things at, cheaper prices than they normally would, it would seem, the Swiss aren't really as affected by that. One, because they're so small. Two, because all of their people are wealthy and they don't buy consumer staples. So they're not going to spend an absorbent amount on things like toilet paper because they just don't have to, you know what I'm saying, and everything like that. So that kind of, the strength of the Swiss dollar does kind of make a lot of sense why they would be, able to beat inflation in the same type of way that a lot of rich people still, in the United States, I had a video on it a little bit ago. They were still going on trips. They were still, doing everything. They were actually buying more luxury goods, in the recession than they were buying before the recession, which normally people would think that's weird. They'd be like, well, even if you are rich, I would expect you to cut back a little because, because, you're still in a recession. But the thing is they're not hit as hard by inflation in general, because think about it. Inflation, like we said, is more going to have to deal with these consumer staples. Things like diamond rings, normal people aren't buying them anyway, so it's not fluctuating as much in the market.
But those tended to be higher value goods and services, such as watches and pharmaceuticals, which are less susceptible to price fluctuations than low margin, mass-produced commodities.
Switzerland is also less exposed to some volatile external factors that pushed prices higher in 2022, such as soaring oil and gas prices caused by Russia's war in Ukraine.
Home to around 1,500 lakes and numerous rivers, hydropower plays a key role in Switzerland's energy production. Hydroelectricity accounts for more than a tenth of Switzerland's energy consumption, making the country less reliant on oil and gas imports than some of its European neighbours.
With the whole Russian,
Swiss energy suppliers
Ukraine war,
are also largely
and,
publicly
oil
owned,
being
which
so
means they're
expensive.
less exposed to extreme market volatility through financial safety nets, but are also subject to more strict pricing regulation.
In Switzerland, we have a lot of state control of prices, which is kind of strange because you think of Switzerland as a very liberal country, but in the crucial areas like energy and rent, you have a lot of public controls. That means that the inflation rate is stretched over time. It doesn't mean that there is no inflation at all, but you can avoid that you have a certain short-term effect.
At the end of 2022, energy prices in Switzerland rose at a rate of 16.2%. below the levels faced by major peers like Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, and Italy. Switzerland's energy regulator now expects prices to rise by a further 27% in 2023, with the typical annual household bill topping 1,215 Swiss francs. Jean-Claude Huber is the manager of Hotel Pisbuin Cloisters in the east of Switzerland. He said standardization of long-term energy contracts have sheltered businesses like his from rising costs in 2023.
This year I'm not worried because the contract is till the end of the year. Afterwards it will go up by multiple 5 probably, so that's really a big increase. But okay, we will have to manage that.
The four-star hotel's
they don't
dynamic
seem too
pricing
worried.
structure also means that Huber has been able
that's
to
nice.
pass on price hikes of around 5 to 10% to the consumer without hurting demand.
We can absorb it because we can play with the rates much more than if you have fixed rates all the time, and that helps us a lot. If you take
And the reason why they're able to adjust these rates and the people don't go crazy is because they have money. So they see that 5% increase and they're like, okay, we'll do it. And that allows the businesses to kind of, meet their demand, which, technically lowers inflation. Because think, if the materials cost a lot, normally the businesses are hurt because the consumer won't pay what the materials are worth. Then the businesses fail, which causes a recession. And when the businesses fail, there's less businesses selling these goods. So then the goods cost more. But in this, it's like, okay, the business has to pay more. The customer pays more. There's that equilibrium, and, that causes way less adjustment in the market.
Take 2 or 3 star hotels, they will have much more problems because these people are very much more sensitive on the costs.
Alongside energy, Switzerland also has stringent controls around the price of goods and services, making it less susceptible to inflation-led price fluctuations.
Of the core products used to measure inflation in the Eurozone, including food, housing and transport, almost 1/3 are subject to price regulation in Switzerland, more than any other European country. High tariffs on certain agricultural imports also mean that domestically produced foods, such as milk and cheese, are preferentially priced and less impacted by movements in global food markets.
We try to buy as much as possible Swiss, but even regional, which really means bread, milk products and so on, to buy them locally. Long term, you want to have a local industry working, functioning, and you need farmers, so it's important that they can sell their products.
In December of 2022, Swiss food prices rose at an annualized rate of 4%. That compares with 11.9% in the US, 16.9% in the UK,
Jeez, they
and
really handled their
19.8%
inflation.
in Germany.
At
Man,
the restaurant, the food cost,
I wish we
can
could get
adapt
some of that
very
over
easily
here.
in increasing the cost of the meals, but we're cautious also because you shouldn't exaggerate.
All of that doesn't mean Swiss consumers have been totally immune to recent price hikes, however. In fact, some say they're feeling the pinch more than ever. So where have you felt it most?
Energy prices, electricity.
Some groceries have gotten more expensive.
As usually, it's the poor people or the low wages that suffer from it, and they really have a problem.
Switzerland's central bank said it now expects inflation to dip to an average of 2.4% in 2023, before falling to 1.8% in 2024.
Even if we have kind of a recessionary scenario, people are still coming in, and that of course stabilizes demand. And I expect the same thing for this year, 2023, and probably also for 2024.
What, if anything, do you think other countries can learn from the Swiss model?
Exchange rate policies is very difficult to imitate because we have the euro, and the euro has to consider all countries, and I think for some countries an appreciation would be maybe good for import prices but really bad for export. This question about who owns energy production, maybe it's a good idea to think about to renationalize at least part of it, to be more resilient and to have a long-term owner who really looks for the consumer. In other places in Europe there was a clear shift to privatization, and in the medium short term that was a very good idea, but it's not very resilient, and they're haunted by these decisions now. And at the time many people said the Swiss are too conservative, but I'd say in retrospect it was a very good decision.
A lot of very, very good points that he made there. First, like he was saying, a lot of people said the Swiss were too conservative, but look at me. They said, look at me now, you know what I'm saying, and everything like that. He also talked about how in a lot of, Western and other European countries, energy is actually, more privatized, whereas, in Switzerland, it's more based on the government is more in control of it, which, like he said, it being privatized could have good short to midterm, benefits, as, people will be more willing to invest their own money into it. They can make their own decisions between also people competing against each other, can cause a rise, and that competitiveness can bring forth innovation, which can be really good. But when you have long term and you have a lot of, unforeseen factors and everything like that, sometimes you do kind of want to have that one person, that head, that president that can just say, all right, here's what we need to do as a collective. Think about it like that. As is Switzerland, when they want to, let's say, shut down or slow energy production, they can shut it down with all the energy in Switzerland. If the U.S. wants to do that, think they may have to go to 1,000 different countries. Some are companies. Some are gonna be for it. Some are not gonna be for it, and everything like that. And they also made the point that so that's one thing that would be helpful to us, and that really is the only thing that seems like would be helpful to us that we could actually do. One, because we're not, person by person as wealthy as the Swiss, and everything like that. That's not going to happen. We're not all of a sudden going to be able to spend money on consumer discretionary in the same type of way that they are. That's just not going to happen. So we're not going to be able to do that. So, a lot of really interesting stuff that it says here. It's pretty interesting. It was good to see Switzerland as a beautiful country and everything that they're dealing with that. There wasn't as much that I really thought we were going to be able to learn as far as how we could possibly help the U.S. and everything like that. because it seems like with the Swiss franc, like he said, it being backed kind of by the euro, that's something that we don't deal with. Our economics and social economics are completely different. And like he said, the way that we handle certain sectors, you know what I'm saying, it being government, public or private, you could say, and everything like that is just different. We're very different countries. So let me know what you guys think about this. I think it was a very interesting video. If there's anything I got wrong, definitely let me know. This was really deep into the economics for me. So I was trying to kind of learn a little bit, you know, as we go. So if there's any mistakes or anything that I made, definitely correct me, because I'm here to learn just like you guys, you know what I'm saying, and everything like that. So hey, I hope you guys all have a great day and everything like that. We're going to go ahead and get into the next topic, guys.